Stonehenge is one of those places you always hear about and see pictures of, but seeing it in person is a whole different experience. Last fall, we were lucky enough to spend a day exploring the museum, walking through the old huts, and finally seeing the stones up close. Here's what it's actually like visiting Stonehenge.
Another day, another rain jacket. It's always raining in the UK.
We started the day in the only way you ever should in the UK, by getting breakfast at a little cafe. Thank you.
I ordered this little shortbread dessert. I'm not really sure, but we do desserts for breakfast here. So we tried to order a brownie. It was only 8 a.m. so started early.
After breakfast, we hit the road to drive from Bath, England to the Stonehenge Visitor Center. So we have been driving through these big open fields and rural towns for the past about 40 minutes. Surprisingly, we are about to pull up to one of the most famous ancient landmarks in the world. I definitely wouldn't expect a place this world-renowned would be in the middle of all these fields.
So yesterday we arrived in Bath, England. Last night we went and explored the famous Roman bathhouse, which was amazing. We seriously learned so much about the Roman Empire and all about the Roman baths and why they were so popular, why it is such a famous landmark. So basically we have the Romans on our mind, and we were just thinking a minute ago about how this really isn't too far from where so many of the Romans lived. As we were walking through the bath, we would look at like these stones. We're like, oh my goodness, this is 2,000 years old. This is insane. Like nothing could get older than this, it seems. But where we're going right now is older to the Romans than how the Romans are to us. Meaning when the Roman Empire was in full swing, Stonehenge had been around for 3,000 years already. The Roman Empire was 2,000 years ago. And now, obviously doing the math, this is 5,000 years ago that this was built. And the crazy thing is that there are so many different questions and nobody actually knows the real answers.
So we just got here 10 minutes after it opens. There's already a super long line. So first, before we go look at Stonehenge itself, we're going to walk through the museum and learn as much about it as we can. They have the QR code where we can scan to get an app that will give us an audio tour. We've seen pictures of Stonehenge our entire lives, but walking through the museum before seeing the stones in person gave us a much deeper appreciation for how mysterious and impressive this place really is. Stonehenge is over 5,000 years old, which is older than the pyramids, and no one knows for sure why it was built. Some believe it was a burial site, others think it was for ceremonies or tracking the sun. I think it probably served more than one purpose. One of the most surprising things we learned is that some of the stones were brought over from 150 miles away. No machines, no wheels, just people moving massive stones using ropes, sleds, and an unbelievable amount of effort. The museum has tools, pottery, and even human remains that were uncovered nearby. Seeing them made it all feel more real. This wasn't just a monument. People actually lived here and worked here and left pieces of their lives behind. I think what this is showing is how big the stones were. And this is how they think that they transported them. Is by putting them on these logs and rolling them. But why would they do this? Why would they do this for 150 miles? Pull these enormous stones. I bet you can do it.
Definitely do it. It would have taken 100 strong people to move this stone. How did you do it?
You just pull. Yeah, I think you moved it a little. Outside the museum, they've created homes based on the ones discovered in archaeological digs in the area. It's easy to imagine what daily life might have looked like. Families living in these huts, cooking over fires with this massive stone circle taking shape nearby.
So stinking cool. That's crazy. A site like the one that they found wasn't like not like a typical like civilization that people lived in. It was more so like a celebration area where they would do rituals and things like this. So this one's kind of mimicking a place where people would like come together and celebrate.
What I keep coming back to, this was a time in human civilization where survival was still probably a difficult thing. You didn't always know where your next meal was going to be coming from, and it wasn't all just kind of easy like it is today. And they still put all that time and effort into trying to move something like that. 150 miles. Why would they do that?
Yeah, 150 miles on foot, but then they would they brought them over by the sea and by the river. Like, they had to place them on boats. How did they get them on boats? Each
How did they
one,
have boats
say
strong enough to float those?
is 30 tons, 60,000 pounds per stone. This doesn't make any sense. I understand why people say you'll leave being more confused. I think we'll just keep asking why.
We were lucky enough to find this really nice volunteer who told us a little bit more about the people who lived in this area in ancient times.
Back in the period we're talking about, 3000 BC, a lady would live to be 30.
Oh.
35 if she was lucky.
At most. 35.
There are women who lived to be 40, but they were regarded as exceptional. A man might make 40. The reason ladies died young was children. Pregnancy was virtually a terminal illness. 1 in 3 ladies died in childbirth. 50% of the children would be dead by their first birthday. Of those that survived, 50% of those would be dead by their 5th birthday. So if you were a lady and you were lucky enough to survive 4 pregnancies, you might have 1 child to show for it. Men lived longer, but it wasn't a lot of fun. When we dig skeletons from this period, we find evidence of intestinal worms. Oh. So everybody had tapeworms and rainworms. Have you ever had an abscess in your teeth?
I have not.
You're lucky. These people had abscesses in their teeth, and they had no pain relief. So let's just imagine the worst toothache you've ever had. It doesn't last a day, it doesn't last a week, it lasts a month. And the bacteria eat their way down through the root of the tooth and egg through the side of the jaw. There's a skeleton in the Salisbury Museum, and you can see the hole in his jaw where the bacteria actually came out. And in the Neolithic there wasn't warfare. We don't think there was warfare. And we think that was because people fight over resources. They fight over access to water or woods. Back in those days, the population was so small in this country, a bit like Idaho really, you could walk for a month and not see a soul. When you go to the stones, there's 1 stone you can touch.
Oh.
As you go up, there's 1 stone off the left-hand side, and it's called the heel stone. The heel stone. Mm-hmm. It wasn't put there by ancient aliens. Right, it was put there by a glacier, and then the glacier retreated and left the stone in the landscape. So when the ice retreated, the people in Europe came across, you could walk in those days from Europe to England, and they came into this area, and there's this massive great big stone in the landscape, and they can't explain it. And in those days, if you couldn't explain something, it was the gods. So it became a sacred place, and the important people, you're the head of the village and you die, you want to be buried by the big stone. And so over hundreds of years, thousands of years, it became a sacred place. And so if you stand with your back to the stone, the hill stone, and look through the monument itself, Stonehenge, you've got a clear sight to where the sun sets on the shortest day of the year. And that's why Stonehenge is where Stonehenge is. It's clever stuff, I tell you.
Yeah, they're genius.
Us Europeans get it right sometimes.
Yeah.
You have a lovely time up there.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to get on the bus to go see the actual stone monument itself. That really nice man gave us a really cool explanation of the kinds of people, of the kinds of things that these people had to go through. It was crazy. Oh my gosh. Back then, I would never want to have a baby. He said your chance of having a baby and you surviving, your baby surviving, was seriously like little to nothing. Crazy. But yeah, now we're going to go get in line and get on a bus. You enjoy your visit.
So we just got on the bus and we're headed to go see the stones. Really excited now that we've learned a lot more about them. But I mean, we've learned a lot about them, but we still don't know anything about them because they are just a mystery and nobody knows anything. You can either take the free shuttle out to the stones or you can walk the whole way. It's about 1.5 miles and it was raining, so we went with the bus. There's a farmer out in his field herding his sheep, and his field is just right next to Stonehenge. That's crazy. Finally, it was time to see the real thing. Seeing Stonehenge up close is hard to describe. You can read about it and see photos, but being there you start to realize just how much effort went into building it. Okay. It's perfect.
Right there?
Yep.
Okay, how about... Is that good?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's weird standing here and knowing this was already ancient when the Romans got here. You used to be able to walk right up and touch them, but now you have to look at them from a distance to help preserve it. This right here is the heel stone, and the sun rises right above it on the summer solstice. That's why they built the Stonehenge right here, is because they couldn't explain why this rock would be here, and the only explanation was that it was placed here by God. This is so stinking cool to see in person. They're just so big. I can't imagine back in the day walking up to that and seeing something back in the old days. I can somewhat understand how they got the stones 150 miles. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but I see how it's possible to roll them and stuff. But what I don't understand is how they got the stones on top of the other stone. Like how they're in like an arch shape. How did they get the top stone up there? That's 20 feet in the air.
Dude, it makes no sense. Why and why and why?
and they're like 20 tons, and somehow they lift them 20 feet in the air without a tractor or any modern equipment. How on earth did they do that? Was gravity just a little different back then or something?
Yeah, but like things were just like a little lighter back then.
How did they get that up there? These two I think make sense, but that one doesn't. I feel like I could just sit here and look at it all day. It's such a surreal place. Another crazy thing about it is that not only are these stones like stacked like this, they're also buried in the ground. So like, see these two, they need to be the same height, but they're not the same size rock. So if one of them's taller, they bury it deeper in the ground. I have no idea how they did that. And then how did they get those rocks on top?
Seriously. So this one is actually the tallest one. It's 30 feet tall, and they say, but 5 feet of it is actually buried beneath the ground.
I think it's cool how close you can get. I kind of expected that we'd be like 50 yards off, but like,
same.
That's 20 yards, 10 yards.
So crazy.
It's crazy to think about how long these stones have been sitting right here, just like this, through all kinds of different weather. They stand just like this. Right now we're just leaving Stonehenge. So glad we came. Definitely recommend it to anybody who's ever in the area. It was super close to Bath. It's not that far from London. Definitely glad we did that. It was one of the coolest things we've seen. Definitely like the coolest historical thing we've seen. So with that said, thanks for watching this video. We'll see you next time.